Alright, hello everyone. Welcome to the next week, the second week of Cold and Fluffy. I'm here once again. We got some match results, we got some upcoming matches to talk about. Staying in the tradition of doing everything the night before, because I am a procrastinator at heart. Right off the bat, you probably noticed we're looking at the same sheet. I haven't really prettied it up or anything. I was honestly, although I definitely have procrastinated, I was actually pretty busy the last couple weeks with various holiday festivities and also pouring like 30 something hours into Minecraft. So I haven't really done much here, and I'm also probably going to talk a little less this week than the upcoming weeks. The first week I think has been a little bit messy. There's only 5 of the 8 games on the Season 3 ticket, and so I am only going to bother talking about the 2 series that were both completely on that ticket. I can't really be bothered to deal with the screenshots or finding where the other series went. Um, and additionally, there's also been some like team lineup messiness with players leaving and such. So I don't have a ton of thoughts this week, to be honest. Because for a lot of these teams, or at least a couple of these teams, I should say, not most of them, but for a couple of these teams, it's just going to be a real wait and see how they work with a new lineup, with pretty important players leaving and getting replaced. So yeah, without further ado, these first 2 matches here, the Platt Adam and Yumi Lucas matches, are the ones that weren't fully ticketed on Season 3. Um, so those are the ones I'm just going to kind of talk briefly about the team and not bother going over the game or the drafts or anything. Starting with the Platt Adam matchup, these were the 2 teams I put in the lowest tier. I figured they would 1-1. They did 1-1. This is the only prediction I got correct. Better than none, I guess. Um, it is interesting. I did also scrim the Platt team, which is worth mentioning, and we ended up 2-0ing them. Although it's a scrim, so you can't take scrim results too seriously. Obviously, both sides were testing stuff. I had like 2 stand-ins as well, which were, I believe, rigged at least on paper. Who stood in? Oh, and that's right. Stonk stood in both games, and then we had 2 different stand-ins as well. We had Davy and Quill. So yeah, not don't want to focus too strongly on the scrim results, but it was like, I mean, we did beat them. I guess that's all I can say really. We did beat them. The game they took off Adam was the game where Wafts wasn't there. I don't remember who they had standing in for Wafts, but as soon as Wafts came back, Adam ended up winning that second game. So my initial take on the Platt team, that I think they're either going to be really good or they're going to be really bad. I didn't really imagine them ending up as a mid-tier team. Um, it does seem like, at least for now, they are on the bottom of the pile still, only getting that win on the Adam team when Wafts is gone. I honestly think part of the issue for this team might really come from the mid. They don't have a true blue mid player. I think in the scrim, like we've had 2 scrims, one against Yelp, one against Platt. And like Choco, and I'll talk about this later, did give us a lot of problems from the mid lane, but the Platt team, if I remember correctly, the mid lane was very easy. I don't think had the greatest amount of impact. I think there was an SF, I think that's like a classic Platt hero, that just really kind of fell flat. So I think right now what they probably really need to figure out is what to do with that mid lane. And maybe if they can get that sorted out, maybe they'll rise up. But yeah, for now they're staying down here. And I think Adam's going to stay with them. Um, don't have much to say about the Adam team. We'll talk about them more next week when both games are ticketed, I guess. Yumi versus Lucas. I want to say these were ticketed on like the wrong ticket, and I'm just so incredibly lazy I can't bother to find them. But this game was actually a 1-1. Um, to start off with the Yumi team, this is the team that's going to be really interesting in the next few weeks. They played with Scrub both games this last week, or 2 weeks ago technically. But Scrub, I believe, has confirmed 100% that he will be leaving the team in a week or two because of his work schedule, unironic work schedule change. Um, and I believe they have decided on TK as a stand-in. but they're still playing with Scrub for now, like until he has to leave. So that raises a few questions, obviously. The first of which is like, how will TK be as a replacement? My personal take on that, I think TK in a vacuum is probably quite a bit weaker than Scrub as a player. However, I did have an issue with this team having too many farm vacuums and not someone that, like, no players that really do anything, at least not in the core roles. And TK is definitely a player that is willing to go out and do things. He's also potentially more of an offlaner than Scroom is. I can't say for 100%. So we might see like a role swap as well. Like we might see Yumi go mid, Scroom safe lane, TK off lane. I think that would be the most logical way to run those three players if you started with them. Maybe they'll just stick with what they were doing with Scrub, though. I don't know. I don't think TK's played mid in a very long time. So I feel like the replacement might work well, just because I think it fits the team better, even if it's a weaker player. However, it is very odd that they're still playing with Scrub when Scrub is confirmed he's leaving. I mean, technically, like, you can't kick a player, but I would imagine that Tree would give his blessing for them to just start using TK right away. So that's a little confusing. And like this week, they drafted really weird shit. They had like a mid Tickies and a mid Lion and offlane Ogre. Just, I don't know. They were just like fucking around, I guess. And they did manage to 1-1 Lucas while doing that, which is good. But if this like isn't gonna be their team in a couple weeks, it's kind of hard to make any judgments. The Lucas team, I think they've actually put their roles fairly normally. I think the game I saw, it looked like it was just like Lucas. Was it? I don't know if it was Mango Girl mid or Lucas mid. No, it was Mango Girl safe lane, right? I think it's like Mango Girl safe lane with Lucas mid or something, and Healy's was playing 4. So I think their lanes are a little more normal. That's right, because it's Jackman off lane. So I think they did like their whole roles. I think it seems like they've already ditched the idea of kind of doing wacky roles and just kept stuff normal. So I think with that in mind, I'll probably move them up a tier. Yumi, I'll just leave there for now because God knows what's going to happen with their team. But Lucas, like right off the bat, let's make a little change here. There we go. Because I did say in the previous video, I think, that if Lucas's roles were normal, I think they would look like a decent team. And my main issue with it was that they seem to be doing some just fun stuff. But if they're not going to do that and they're just going to keep it clean, we'll move them up a little bit. But we'll talk more about them next week when they have games on the right ticket. So the first game we're actually going to look at the games of is Harb versus Claire, which is my game. This isn't actually the Harb team anymore, though. This is the other team that's had like a really weird player toss-up where Harb, before even week 1, decided he was like quitting like all his amateur leagues, but he's still playing Dota and stuff. It's very weird. I don't quite understand what was going on there, to be honest, but I hope he's doing better and that this is going to be a good thing for him personally. But for the team he's left behind, it's hard to say exactly how they're going to do. I do think this maybe fixes the roles a little bit, because Harb was going to be transitioning to offlane, and in theory they could get their permanent replacement to just be someone that already plays offlane, which would help a lot. Um, but yeah, I guess we'll just look at the games for now. They actually had 2 stand-ins this week. They had GSP, German Sparkle Party, standing in for Harb. Obviously, a pretty big metal drop there. Harb was Ancient 2, I think, Ancient 3, like mid-Ancient at draft, and he's like Divine 1 now or something, Ancient 5 now. So they did, they just kind of picked up a friend, I guess. I don't think there's a permanent replacement for Harb yet. I suppose that's partially my job, but I don't really know. I think this team is just kind of riding along, seeing what happens. So that was one replacement. Their P5 was also missing this week. That's not going to be a permanent thing. They were just busy, and they had Quill stand in. The Greg Classic, shoot someone, get Quill. Quill is also, I should mention, I think most people consider Quill to be a player that plays above their MMR, and GSP too, for that record. when they're in these team environments, but Quill is also, I think, like a full badge below the person she was replacing. I think the player they normally have was like Legend 1 or something, so worth mentioning. The two stands they used for this week were potentially quite a bit lower. As you can already see, I just realized I'm like, I think the bottom of the screen's cut off for the recording, so hopefully you saw what I was pointing to, but yeah, whatever. As you can see, we did win pretty decisively, but let's take a quick look at the draft. Um, we banned the GSP Night Stalker. We banned the Jakiro, since that's, I think, Quill's most played hero. It's certainly a hero she plays an awful lot. Double check myself there. Yeah, it was her most played. They ban H's Brood and Reedy's Ember. We end up picking up the Spirit Breaker hero. They respond with the Mars Willow combo. The Willow is one of Quill's other most played heroes. I think Jakiro and um, Dark Willow stand. Let's double check actually, since I keep talking about it. May as well look at the Dota buff. Yeah, they stand far above the rest in terms of game played. Mars is a hero I believe German Sparkle parties played quite a bit, at least in ticketed lobbies. And obviously they work very well together. They kind of block pick a few heroes as well. Mars makes it very hard to play range cores. So, yeah. We then follow up with a snap. Um, I thought it was kind of a nice combo with a Spirit Breaker. You can also just kind of fight against the Mars arena. The globs just fly over it, despite being projectiles. Then we have a little bit of banning going on. We focus our bans, I guess, somewhat, not strictly at Phantom, but a lot at like the carry heroes. They've obviously already picked the offlaner. I think this was mostly in our minds heroes that Spirit Breaker couldn't kill. Was the thought process there? They banned heroes that I guess they thought would. I think this is heroes they thought would lane well into the Mars. Although the Timber and the Luna, I think, might be player specific. I thought Pyro played a lot of Luna. Maybe not. I played a lot recently. I think is why they banned that hero. Then obviously H is a known Timber spammer, so they ban out the Timber Saw. They then pick up a Lena for 4, which was a little interesting here. I was under the impression this was going to be a flex pick, and maybe it was a flex pick, but they ended up running it 4 in a situation I didn't expect them to run it 4 in. So, because we then picked a Lich and a Lifestealer. Um, Lifestealer is obviously very good against that Mars Willow lane, both in lane and the game as a whole. It is pretty rough against Lena if the Lena is a core, which is why I think it was a bit of a risky pick from me. Um, and also I was surprised they didn't end up running the Lena core, but either way, they then ended up picking a Wraith King. Um, I don't entirely know what the thinking was here. They actually streamed this game, and I went back and watched their perspective, and I was a little surprised because they were mentioning heroes that I thought would be a problem if they picked. Like they mentioned a PL. They mentioned shoot, what other hero was it? A Razor, I think. Yeah, they mentioned Razor and PL. I'm like, I look at this draft, and those are definitely heroes that would have been scary. Phantom's kind of known for the PL. We lack, we're somewhat lacking in AOE. I think I did have the PL on my mind when we picked Lifestealer, and I figured we could hopefully just deal with it, to, or try and deal with it, try and just go fast. And the Razor definitely would have been very scary. I think that pick would have been a big problem. We actually ended up banning it, as you can see here. We thought they could still just run it mid and kind of dunk on us. Um, yeah, they picked the Wraith King. I don't think it worked very well. They lost the lane pretty hard. It didn't have a ton of impact, but there was some kind of thinking there. They never actually specified in their stream exactly what it was. Someone just suggested Wraith King, and Phantom's like, yeah, it looks really good here. So I'm assuming it's just because Spirit Breaker is seen as like a burst hero, that if they get the pick off on Wraith King, you just turn with the second life. Maybe was his thinking. I'm not really sure. I think the lane just ended up being too hard in part. They then ban a Puck and a DP. We then ban a Windrunner, and a Razor. Ours, I think, are pretty obvious that we're banning heroes that directly counter Lifestealer. Um, I think there's maybe more comfort aimed. I'm not sure. Maybe they're already thinking of picking Storm slash Void. I think they may have just been thinking of picking a Spirit. So they're kind of picking or banning the anti-Spirit heroes. And then inevitably, because this is what always happens this patch, two Spirits get picked with the Void and the Storm. I do think as objectively as possible, it's obviously pretty hard to look at these drafts when I've already played out the games. I drafted one of the drafts and already know who won, but I do wonder if their draft was a little bit too greedy. Our draft is very fast paced. We arguably lack a bit of tower damage, but they don't exactly have insane high ground defense. And we have a lot of like jump that can jump past the T3. I think not addressing the lifestealer in any serious manner may be a mistake. Um, Raking obviously does pretty good physical, but lifestealer I believe is meant to be pretty decent against him. Obviously, Strength Hero gets a lot of feast value for the lifestealer. Storm Spirit also. Like, you theoretically can't get killed by the lifestealer if he doesn't have a lot of assistance, because you just kite him, but you don't really threaten the lifestealer. I don't know. We picked this lifestealer pretty early, potentially into a bad matchup with Alina, and I think they just didn't really answer it. And I think with that in mind, um, our draft just ended up being a bit stronger. I think they just kind of let that one slip, to be honest. But yeah, so it wasn't honestly a particularly close game. Just very straightforward Dota. Kind of hold a lead for a while and then ramp up as you end the game. Game 2, what happened here? It was somewhat similar, to be honest. It was definitely a little different, because I think their early game went a lot better. Yes, they actually have a bit of a lead, all the way up to 5k, but the end result is somewhat similar. So let's just talk about the draft again. It's the same two stand-ins, nothing changed. Um, they banned the Spirit Breaker and the Broodmother this time, deciding that the Ember wasn't worth the ban over the SB. We ban out the same two heroes. Um, we then first pick a Lich, just a comfort 5. They move away from the Mars Dark Willow and into a Lion Axe. Um, I think it's a pretty good opening. Uh, the Lion, I do think, is a lot stronger than the Dark Willow right now, especially against these Spirit heroes. Like, you've let through this Reedy Ember, which we then end up picking, and Lion's just so great against those heroes. Just all of them, the Void, the Ember, the Spirit, the Storm, sorry, not the Spirit, and the Puck, which is the honorable fourth Spirit in my mind. So I think that was a good pick. The Axe, I think, is more just a comfort pick. It does seem a little weird to pick this early, because there's a lot of room for us to kind of avoid getting ourselves in trouble, if you know what I mean. Like the axe call, there's some heroes that it absolutely destroys, and there's some heroes that it's not very effective against, other than just some behavior piercing lockdown. Like Lifestealer is probably one example, where if you call Lifestealer when he's enraged, like you deal no damage with um, Blade Mail, and sometimes he just kind of tanks through it. Um, But yeah, anyway, it was a comfort pick for them. And there's obviously in other patches when the hero's stronger, it's pretty first pickable even when you don't see your carry matchup. But anyway, so they do that. We pick the Ember. They once again ban the Timber. We actually go for mid heroes this time. We've picked the Ember instead of the offlaners, so we try to avoid problematic matchups there, based on the hero pools of the players we're against. So we ban out the OD, the Riki, and a Viper. No idea if they actually would have picked a Viper, but did want to find out. Choco did that to us in a scrim already. They ban the Timber again. They ban a couple heroes that are good against Axe in lane. And then they pick up a Venge, which did surprise me. It wasn't really a hero I see a whole lot nowadays, especially not as a 4. I know it was pretty well liked when they first added, like, what exactly did they even do to the hero? Because the Axe had been there for a while. They like changed it slightly. I think they made it better. I think right around whatever patch we're on, like the original non-lettered patch, the hero was very popular and being picked for support a lot. Kind of fell off. They gave it a couple of nerfs, and other heroes kind of rose to replace it. So I was definitely surprised seeing that hero reappear. We then pick a pretty odd bunch here. I pick a Shadow Demon in an attempt to counter the Axe. And then we end up picking a Brewmaster. I'll give you the inside scoop on that. There was no real reason for it, at least for me anyway. H just kind of suggested it. I'm like, alright, non-elimination group stage, we may as well try things out. I think it was a really questionable pick here. There's very little lockdown from our supports. I think in hindsight, like if I had have picked the brew first, or just been thinking about the brew, I could have picked a hero other than Shadow Demon with some lockdown, and our draft would probably have looked a lot better than it ended up looking. But we ended up with Shadow Demon and Brewmaster, which does leave our draft a little stunned, lacking. They then pick a Juggernaut, which at this point I assumed would be a safe lane Juggernaut. I just realized I've been saying all this with the bands cut off, haven't I? Yep, my bad. Whatever. Get used to it. I'm not re-recording. They then pick a Juggernaut, which I assumed to be a safe lane Jug. I assumed the idea was just, I don't know, it does okay against Brew. It likes the fact that there's no stuns to burst it. It can always get off Omni slash the little slash or the spin, whatever it needs to get off. There's not really much to stop it doing that. Um, yeah, it's obviously not, I think, incredible against Shadow Demon, because Shadow Demon can save people from your Omni with the bubble, but most carries are bad against Shadow Demon, so Jug's definitely not the worst, I think, anyway. Um, we then ban a Lina and a Storm, because once again, we're assuming this is a mid, or we're assuming this is a safe lane Jug, so we're just banning more mids that we think could be problematic. Storm, obviously, we have no lockdown. Lina, just a generally safe pick, should have done well against the Ember. Um, Lifestealer, Ursa were their bans. We don't have a carry showing yet. I think they were just thinking of heroes that were good against Axe still. Both of those are pretty reasonable. We end up picking a PA, which is somewhat questionable against the Axe if you get caught, but blows him up if you don't. Shreds both the supports. Similarly with Jug, can potentially get burst down by the Omni if there's a little stun assistance, but otherwise I think kind of blows him up as well. Definitely like a very double-edged sword here. And probably a little risky given our lack of stuns, but we did have a lot of team fight and some save from the axe already, so I was decently confident with that one. And then they finally picked this Razor, a hero I totally thought they would have picked last game. They instead saved for this game, and then they put it safe lane, and they put the Jug mid. Going back and watching their perspective, the Jug mid was planned all along. Greg decided he liked it against the Ember, and the Razor was just a pick against the Brew, mostly. So yeah, sometimes I question why I read out every hero individually. I could probably just show the draft and give my opinion on it, but whatever. That's what we do here. Everything's long-winded. So my opinions. I already kind of mentioned what I think the flaw in my own draft was. I think in their draft, I did find the Venge a little weird, but it's not the end of the world. I think the Jug mid was a mistake, personally. Um, Maybe with the Razor it could have worked, but Jug as a mid just doesn't really do anything. Um, I know Greg actually had some like technical difficulties this game that like further hurt his ability to have impact. Whereas like Quick Buy got fucked, and so he thought he bought an item, but he didn't buy an item, which put him behind a little. But generally speaking, I think even if you're having like an okay game, it's really hard to have comparable impact as Jug relative to an Ember. Um, and the Razor pick I thought was a bit weird as well. They did win the lane, and winning that lane along with the other lanes going okay, and the fact that we didn't we had a hard time fighting them with this lineup early, meant that they did have a lot of control over the early game, but then they just kind of fell off. And I'm not sure how much of that was draft. I think they probably could have won this game, but there was definitely just this point where the Razor, is running around with his BKB. Um, the Jug's just running around with like Yasha, and I think he just had a Javelin because of the quick buy era. And I guess he had the full Maelstrom by the time PA got Deso, but like PA got Battle Fury Deso, and they just couldn't really stop her. And then she very quickly got a BKB, and then they really couldn't stop her because they couldn't even use the support stuns on her. Would have to get a jump right away, or they would have to get an Axe call after BKB, which would probably kill Axe in the process. So yeah, I don't know. Um, I'm not crazy about the Jug mid pick. And I do wonder if there are better heroes than Razor that match into PA. Maybe I'm underestimating that matchup. Maybe that was more of an execution thing. But at least in this game in particular, it really didn't feel like Razor was a threat to PA. Like PA would just stand on the edge of the fight and then jump onto the Razor when she was ready, or onto a hero that wasn't near Razor. She never really let herself get linked. And the Jug just didn't have a lot of impact. So I don't know. I don't actually know if I'd call their lineup like worse this game because I do think I think my lineup had a lot of flaws, but I think it's kind of like the Lifestealer from last game where there's just kind of like there's a blatant issue with what I've drafted here, and it wasn't really taken advantage of. So maybe in the end we did have a better draft. It's hard to say. I definitely, at least in game, we did end up winning, but there's obviously the stand-ins and stuff I do think has messed with this team a bit. So with all that said, am I going to move these teams around? I kind of can't leave Harb up here. I also can't leave him called Harb. I'm going to call him Buttery Greg. It takes a bit too much room, doesn't it? I'll just call it Greg. Greg. I think we are going to end up moving him down. Um, Probably down to this tier, I think, for now. Just until at least they sort out their like stand-in situation or their permanent replacement situation. So I think at least this week there was maybe just a slight lack of planning, I think. Like it felt like I think the drafts, and this is obviously going to be an issue largely due to the missing players and such, and the fact that it's their captain that left of all the players. I don't know. I feel like their drafts, I feel like they had the potential to like kind of win or do very well in drafts, and they kind of just picked whatever everyone was feeling like playing. Like there wasn't, I assume, too much talk, pardon me, about what they were going to pick before the games. So, yeah, I don't know. I feel like there's some coordination that probably needs to improve for now. Let's jump on to the other game that actually got ticketed, which is Smack versus Yop. Oh, I should say, I guess I'm just leaving my own team now, there for now. Almost forgot about it. Smack versus Yop. Game 1. This is a very interesting game. Because if you notice, Rage Against the Marcy's had 28 kills to the Smack team's 36, and yet they still won. And I have my guess as to why. But let's quickly go over the draft again. Let's do it a little faster this time, because I feel like reading everything individually is a little bit silly. So we see a couple bands. We see the Spirit Breaker, very popular right now. Weaver, also fairly popular. Um, I'm a little confused because I wasn't aware that anyone on this team was a big Weaver player. But anyway, it's a good hero. Can't complain. Maybe maybe Dr. Claw plays it or something. Not sure. On the other side, we see the J-Bay bands, the Wind Ranger and the Enchantress. We see an immediate Snapfire pickup for Apon Zeus, who was standing in this game for their normal player. Who is their normal player? I actually don't even know. Oh, that's right, it's Milo. So they actually had a real support stand-in for Milo, which I mean MMR wise too. No, I guess Apon Zeus has lost some MMR. Arguably a little bit rigged, but probably not really. Probably fine. But anyway, we see the Snapfire pick for him. We then see the Dr. Club Zeus and the Eno Jug. Not Zeus. Fucking Pudge. I kind of mentioned this team had a lot of hero spammers. They didn't really ban any of the hero spammer heroes. 2 hero spammer heroes get picked up right away. We then see an OD pick from Smack. Definitely an interesting pick that early. I assume there was a reason behind it. I couldn't tell you what it is. I'm actually very confused because the Meteor Hammer combo is not very effective against the Juggernaut hero. You're also standing still for a while, which makes you somewhat hookable. Not to mention that Pudge can also save the person from the combo with Hook. So it is a little bit of a weird pick to me, but I assume he had his reasons. It looks like he did very well this game with it. We then see a Jakiro ban, a Timber ban. This I should also mention, this could have been a flex pick OD here. Because I know JB plays it as well, so Uh, yeah, that's probably the reason. They probably picked it as like flex, maybe. Not sure. But anyway, we see Juggernaut, not Juggernaut. We see a Timber ban, a Jakiro ban. We see the Axe. This is actually all Bible Man focus bans, isn't it? The Timber Saw and the Bloodseeker was something he did a lot last season. He'd pick it very early just to kind of give you a problem to deal with. And they also banned the Axe, which is just a bit weird to me. I assume that's just to protect Jug or something. I don't know. I didn't think of Bible Man to be a huge Axe player, but I'm sure his brother knows better than I do. Double check. Actually, the band's in frame, right? Yeah. On the other side, we see a Quap and a Lena ban, potentially just to protect Smack mid, especially if he's considering playing this OD. Then we see this Night Stalker pickup. I'll talk a little bit more about our scrim after, but they played Night Stalker in our scrim as well, and it was pretty scary. So I guess they're running that back for this game because we actually we scrimmed before these games were played, so that worked well for them. They're picking it again. They then pick up an Ursa, which is good against the Jug. Should be able to lane finding as the Night Stalker, although you definitely get kited at some point in the game if you can't lock him down with either Basher or just the rest of your team. Um, and we also see a Willow, which seems to lock the OD in mid. But I suppose Snap is also a hero that could theoretically be flexed. Probably not. They probably did just want an OD mid right off the bat. Still don't quite understand why, but I assume that's what was going on. We then see the Choco Clinks. Once again, talked about this team being a bunch of hero spammers. They got 3 out of the, I guess maybe not 5, because I don't know if we can count the Opera Heat, but 3 out of the 4. 3 of the like expected hero spammer heroes, I guess. You're probably not going to see an offlane Meepo or a Pause 5 Ricky, but the Clinks, the Jug, and the Pudge are probably going to be heroes they're going to pick quite a bit if they can. So anyway, see that picked up is a little bit of an interesting pick into an OD, though, I have to say. You don't have anything to protect you from the combo. Um, you can potentially kite Ursa, I guess, is maybe the reason they picked it. But OD combo definitely fucks you. And you're not really a hero that wants a super early BKB. You just kind of want stats more than anything. So the early game seems like it could be rough. And he did actually lose the lane. Um, with Smack getting a very early Meteor Hammer. The laning on Dota buff is that cuts off at 12 minutes. For some reason, it lasts a super long time. So, not surprised to see that lane was lost, but then there's still no offlaner on Smack, so they ban a couple more. They ban a Slardar and a Tide. The Tide ban is super odd to me. Tide looks pretty awful here. He's notoriously bad into Night Stalker. And I don't really think he's good into Clinks either. Probably not bad into him, but not good. Jug, probably fine against Jug, but like, who gives a shit? It's a Jug. You picked it early. Like, I don't think he's amazing against Jug. Slardar's a little more understandable. I think it is amazing. Not amazing. Maybe not amazing. It's very good against Jug. It's probably a lot better than Tide is. It definitely beats the shit out of you. Doesn't really care if you spin on it. Um, Probably should be good against Clinks as well, because you can't really ever escape the Slardar like you can many other heroes. And on the other side, we see Grimstroke and Oracle ban. Pretty reasonable. The Oracle, I believe, is a favorite of Yops. I think he's like Platinum on it. So then they end up picking Bible Man the Mars, which looks really good here. I mean, it's obviously fantastic against Clinks. Any ranged hero just gets absolutely cucked by a Mars. Um, it's also very durable against Omni Slash because of the Bulwark proccing every other hit. Very hard to Omni Slash down a Mars. Even though like you're kind of good in theory early with the spin, it's kind of hard to spear you and get you in the arena, but you can't really kill the Mars either. So I like that pick quite a lot. And then there's pick Shadow Shaman. I never know what to think of Shadow Shaman. I hate playing the hero, so I tend to just ignore it, unless it's really meta. But y'all play this in a pub with me. It wasn't very impressive, but it's clearly a hero he's got his eye on, so he's like, alright, we'll just pick a little more lockdown, because they are definitely lacking lockdown. I would have absolutely picked a Lion instead of a Shaman. The hero's just, I think, way better right now, but whatever. Shaman's cool. Can't really complain. That's just my personal opinion on the two heroes. I don't think that's necessarily true. But anyway, those are the two drafts. I think, the Smack team looks like it has a lot of scary potential early, especially considering they won all these lanes. At least according to Dodo, if they won all these lanes. They didn't even have a 1K lead, but whatever. I mean, if they're like, the Ursa lane should go fine. I expect the mid lane to win. Um, the Mars lane apparently did well too, even though theoretically maybe could have been a little difficult. Looks like went for a very greedy build. Power treads into Battle Fury, so that's probably what made it somewhat doable. Um, Plus, the Bible Man JB lane is, I think, probably just very skilled. So, I didn't mention this earlier, but I just realized they picked Dark Willow into Jug as well, which is really weird. Um, there's some odd picks here. I'm not sure what to think about a couple of these, but I do think the Smack lineup looks like, I mean, it should be very aggressive early. Like, they should be able to get rolling. Um, OD's a very active hero by nature. Uh, Ursa's more active than most carries. Kind of gets the early Aegis, gets the Diffusal Blade, kind of runs at people pretty well. And the Mars just completely shuts down the Clinks in theory. So I'm not surprised to see they won early. I am a little surprised to see they lost the game. I guess it is worth mentioning that this draft definitely lacks tower push. They have OD Hammer and they have the Snapfire anti-armor, and that is it. Whereas on the other team, they have Clinks and Shadow Shaman. I mean, Clinks isn't the tower pusher he used to be, I guess, but Shadow Shaman is obviously a very good tower pusher, and Jug and Clinks, they can kind of just hit towers when they get some items. They're I don't think they're particularly great tower hitters, but they're definitely a lot better than the likes of Ursa, OD, and Mars. So I'm guessing what happened here is that they just kind of hit a wall and couldn't go high ground, and ended up just dying in a single suicide push or something to actually GG'd out here, huh? Wait, no. No, they didn't GG out. They did get everything taken. Yeah, so I assume they just kind of hit a wall, right? This would be... Yeah, this is like kind of upside down, but anyway. So I assume Smack's team just couldn't really break high ground, then they lose when they get late game against the insane push of the Gradient team. So, yeah, I don't know. I honestly would have thought that Smack's draft could have won. I do find a couple of the picks odd. I don't entirely understand the OD still, but it worked, so whatever. And I do think the Willow is a little bit weird. You don't really have any instant lockdown against heroes I would think you would need instant lockdown against, but it is kind of hard for Nice Talker to fly around through brambles without BKB at least. And you do have long range cancel for Pudge ults, although it does have a bit of a delay on it, so maybe reasonable. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe all this team needed was like a little extra tower push. Maybe they picked like Jakiro instead of Snap or something. I don't know. I don't know if that's even enough, but I think I kind of liked both drafts. I do think the Clinks pick is a little weird, but it's a comfort pick. I mean, these two heroes you would never see picked early, but they're comfort picks. So like the two picks that weren't just hardcore comfort picks were reasonable. So I don't know what else to say. Let's have a quick look at game two, shall we? Because game two, the op team actually had a kill lead when they won. And it was almost entirely on Eno, which is very surprising. He goes for this very weird build. I think he did this in the first game too, where he goes Battle Fury, Yasha, Basher. It's like super bizarre. I'm sure it's just like straight up bad, but he likes it, so that's what he's doing. Um, we see a slight ban change. We're gonna see a Pudge ban instead of the what did they ban last game even? Oh, Weaver. They banned a Weaver. Yeah, I don't think they were really gonna pick Weaver, so they changed it up to a Pudge ban, but they let the Jug through. The other three bans are the same. We see a Grimstroke instead of a Snapfire. Couldn't tell you exactly why. We then see a Techies Jug to make up for the Pudge Jug. We see them steal the Night Stalker for Bible Man, which was always a Bible Man classic. I'm almost surprised they didn't go for it the previous game now I think about it, because this was always one of his best heroes, and is in a very good place right now. We see that Clinks get banned out, along with a Quap and a DP. Once again, it seems like Smack is trying to secure his lane a little bit. He knows he doesn't have last pick. On the other side, we see Wraith King, Spectre, and Lifestealer banned out. I assume these are. I mean, I don't. I mean, Wraith King, Spectre, I think are good against Jug. They're definitely heroes that Stonks plays. Lifestealer may be a little more confusing, but I mean, probably, I don't know. Probably just fine against Jug, maybe. Because, like, if you don't kill him in Omni Slash, does Lifestealer just, like, kill him? Especially if he gets inside someone, he kind of hard to Omni Slash him then. I don't know. A little weird. Gonna ignore it. There's probably a good reason for it that I'm not aware of. It's potentially. Oh, they may have also, of course, been thinking of doing the Sanking already. Doing the Sanking Techie's lane, and Lifesteal is definitely decent against that lane, so. We see this Sanking pickup. This lane is like. I've seen this lane done before, and it is really nasty if done correctly. You get the Techies begins his suicide jump animation. Sanking stuns, the suicide lands, the stun ends, but they're silenced. They've taken a shit ton of damage. They're in Sandstorm. Um, it is pretty scary, I think, if done well. So, pretty understandable lane. Um, we then see a Earth Spirit, which surprises me. I didn't realize JB played that, but apparently he does. And a Razor picked up, so that gives them a little bit of catch, uh, which the Razor doesn't bring to the table. A lot of mids bring catch to the table. The OD brung it last game. All the Spirits bring it. Puck and Quap bring it to. I mean, Quap to a lesser degree, but Puck obviously has a lot of catch as well. So Earth Spirit brings a bit of catch. Razor counters the Jug, in theory at least. Um, and they could put it safe lane or mid at this point in time, if that was on their mind. We then see the P5 picked up an Ogre for Yop. Um, Not sure what to say about that. It's an Ogre. It doesn't really die to Earth Spirit, I think is probably the most important part of the pick here. And the Jug does like the Bloodlust buff, so pretty decent pick. We see a Lina and an OD ban, probably to protect the Razor, based off last game. Um, yeah, or maybe they're just generically good heroes right now. Smack clearly liked the OD, and Lina I think has been pretty decent for a while. On the other side, we see a Storm and a TA ban. They're obviously assuming this is a safe lane Razor. Um, they, I guess, don't think they have good enough lockdown for Storm. And they might be right. Outside of the Sanking stun, the Techies and the Ogre have a hard time getting that stun in there if it's the first stun. TA is always a hero that can kind of 1v9, and that's something you got to be very aware of with Smack. But then it's actually mid Razor, and they pick up the Luna for Stonks, which I think is probably fine. I mean, Luna's fine most games. As long as your carry matchup's fine, I think Luna's fine. Um, then they also pick up Puck on the Radiant team to finish off the draft. I remember Choco being quite a bit of a Puck player before he retired. I think maybe I'm confusing him with Woffs because Woffs definitely plays Puck, but I thought Choco did too. It is a little bit of a weird pick here, though. You have the Night Stalker, frankly, just the entire supporting cast here. Night Stalker, Grim, and Earth Spirit all pose a lot of problems for a Puck. Is good against the Razor, which is probably why they picked it. Probably just fine against Luna. I don't think it's particularly good or bad. We see that Smack once again wins his lane. I assume this is a super early piece of travel. Maybe there's even a Yasha. I'm not going to bother checking, but probably pretty rich. I expect Smack to win his lane most of the time. I mean, I do think he's still going to be like one of the best players here. It actually kind of just looks like Jug went off here though. I assume there's obviously a lot of other stuff here. I mean, the entire 2 through 5 on Radiant is very much enablers. Puck can go off, but it's a very hard puck game. Sanking can kind of go off, not quite to the same degree, but it's once again, I think, for a similar reason to the puck, not the easiest Sanking game on Earth. Looks like he got a lot of farm, but didn't participate in that many kills. On the other hand, really did just kind of go off this game, which is surprising to see such an early Jug pick. I think they had pretty good counters to the Jug. The Jug build, once again, is just so incredibly greedy. I mean, you definitely think if a Night Stalker blinked on top of you with this build, with a little bit of follow-up, you would just be dead. Um, so it is surprising to see him go this well, or do this well, but I mean, that's why they tell you to ban the Jug. Man is very good at the hero. So yeah, it's a very interesting looking game. I almost want to watch it. I won't, but I'm almost very curious to see exactly how this happened. Because honestly, looking at these drafts, I would definitely give the advantage to Smack's team here. I think it's a very, very hard puck game. I think it's a very hard, not a very hard, but a decently hard second game for the same reason. Techies as a hero is just fucking weird. It's the impact is very odd. I think just generally kind of low, unless you're like very very good at the hero. Um, and I think Luna, with that in mind, should have no problem carrying this game against Jug, but that's not what happened at all, which is curious. But anyway, that's that. Not gonna move the Smack team. The Yop team though, so they obviously did quite well on up against Smack. They 2-0'd him. The games did look decently close. Smack obviously very nearly winning game one. Um, and it looks like it was kind of just all in the back of game two. But I also scrimmed them and lost quite hard as well. Well, no, I shouldn't say as well, because Smack didn't lose as hard as I did. It is interesting to note, I think, that Choco lost his lanes against Smack, because I think that confirms that the Smack team is still good, and that Smack is still very good, because our team definitely struggled against the Choco mid. I was expecting him to be very rusty, but he kind of just clapped us with very early picks as well. Their offlaner as well. I had a lot of questions about how well their offlaner would perform. He didn't seem like a big offlane player, and he seemed like a Meepo spammer, but he played very well both games. He seemed to do well against the Smack team. So overall, I think I really underestimated the Yop team on the initial power rankings. So we're going to move them up all the way here to replace the Greg team. Because I think that's... I mean, I still think Smack's good. Um, I won, and therefore I'm allowed to leave myself here, and Yop 2 of both of us, so this seems pretty sensible. Yeah, not much else to say. Yeah, so Yop 2-0'd us in a scrim, they 2-0'd Smack. Smack team still seems pretty decent. Smack in particular seems to be owning like pretty much every game as expected. So I think they're still good. Let's look at next week, shall we? Um, Platt versus Yumi. I still think the Platt team has a lot of problems. I have no idea what's going on in the Yumi team, but they at least seem capable of winning games right now, so I think I'm going to give this 2-0 to Yumi's favor. Buttery Greg versus Smack. Once again, really hard to say what is going on with the Buttery Greg team. I have no idea what players they're going to be using this week. Um, and so I guess all I really have to go off is that I think the Smack team is quite good still. I think that Smack can still 1v9. Um, honestly, I think if the Greg team kind of gets their shit together and gets like whatever, gets a stand-in that like works well with the team and they kind of just have a coherent game plan, I could definitely see them taking a game off Smack, but I don't know. I just don't know who's going to show up, so I guess we'll give it another 0-2, 2-0 to Smack. Adam versus Lucas, pretty easy one for me. I think this will probably be kind of the game I'm most interested in this week, tomorrow, I should say, less than 24 hours from now, because I'm very curious to see how they do up against a team that I rated highly. Um, can Woffs carry games? Because that's the big question here. Can Woffs carry games? And I think Lucas's team will be a very good test for them. Obviously, with how I've ranked them, I have to give Lucas a 2-0, but I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. Woffs is a very good player. I think Adam can shine as well, put in the right situations. So I don't know. It's kind of one of these things where I definitely think it's possible for Adam to take a game, but I don't quite have the confidence to change that prediction to a 1-1. We'll see. If Adam 2-0s Lucas, then I definitely have to rethink the Adam team entirely. Um, but yeah. Anyway, moving on. The last prediction of the week: Claire versus Yop. I already scrimmed Yop, and I already got beaten by Yop. And although I think that generally speaking, losing scrims is better in terms of like learning what to fix when you play a team the second time, I do still feel safest if I just assume the same thing will happen again, and that Yop 2-0s us. I mean, they 2-0'd Smack already, so just seems fair that they also 2-0 us. These scores all look incredibly similar. But no, yeah, this is what I think. This is what I'm expecting this coming week. I imagine in reality there will be more 1-1s. Like there's probably going to be at least 1-1-1 amongst this lot, but generally, I keep saying fucking generally speaking. God, it's late. But yeah, this is what I think. I think all the teams on the right are gonna 2-0. We'll see. Anyway, that was that. God, I feel like I began talking and I just did not stop. Why the hell do people watch these? I'm honestly still confused. But anyway, I am back. Apologies to the teams I didn't really cover. I'll cover you next week if you ticket your games properly. XD? Until then, love you all. See you probably next Sunday night. Who knows? Maybe earlier in the week if I'm feeling really wild. But best of luck.